Welcome. You're listening to Scientific Healing with Dr. Anastasia Chopelas. I know the power of vibrational healing by combining physics and traditional energy healing. You can learn more about it by going to healersu.com. Okay, today I have really special guests. I've had them on before, and each time I talk to them, I get so inspired. They are the founders of Focus Life Force Energy, or you can find it by using the letters FLFE. They call it fluffy sometimes, but it's not very fluffy. It's highly powerful. And what this does is it sends a stream of very high consciousness energy to wherever you want it to go. And they have done incredible charity work throughout the world, helping elevate the energy of different places. And I'm going to let them fill you in what this is all about. And so I'm very happy to introduce Clayten Stedmann and Jeffrey Stegman. Yes, their names are similar, but I don't think they're related. So welcome to the show. I'm so happy you're back. I know this is the fourth time.
Great to be with you again.
Yes. So since the last time we've spoken, there have been a number of developments and new studies. But what I'd like to do is let people understand exactly how this process came to be.
FLFE is activating a high consciousness field, kind of as you said, but it's really creating a quantum connection between a unique identifier for a place or a cell phone or an object in the FLFE system, and instantly a high consciousness field is activated at the location. So people can get on the free trial, which we'll talk more about later, and it really happens almost instantly, within seconds. So going back, gosh, almost 17 years, 15 years or more, Clayten. We've been in business with the service 10 years. And prior to that, we worked with the origin of the technology. And originally, the inventor was trying to generate electricity using various methods, and he ended up kind of with the Nikola Tesla type setup with high-speed alternating current through stacks of plates and coils, and a very highly charged output stack and a very high consciousness field. And that's where the magic happens in that field. And originally he was putting water on that in that space, and the water would take away people's arthritis pain. And so he was selling the water, shipping it to Germany, and it would lose its charge. I think in weeks, right, Clayten? It wouldn't last super long.
About 2 weeks usually.
Yeah.
It has to do with the hydrogen bonding in water. When you when a healer puts healing energy on water, the same thing happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can even pray on water, like holy water will do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a water product coming out fairly shortly that will do that, have that be a continuous fountain of healing water. It's great to drink. So do you want to pick it up from there, Clayten?
Yeah, so this inventor, he was part of there's 2 other people with him, and they started around the year 2000, and they spent 7 years trying to create this free energy device before I met them. At least met the last inventor. The other 2 had given up because they ran out of money after 7 years, and they went and did something else. So I think because his intent was so pure towards humanity, that even though he didn't create a free energy device, he stumbled across a way to focus what we call life force energy, chi or prana, in that output stack that Jeff mentioned. And he did charge up water. He charged up crystals and put them all around his house. Um, he eventually would uh, charge up pieces of a broken marble tabletop and ship that to Germany because it held the charge longer than the water, so people could put their little spray bottle of water on top of uh, the marble, and they wouldn't have to keep shipping the marble back and forth from where he was to where they were. And eventually, we discovered that if you took a picture of the water of the marble tabletop, that broken piece that fit into the output stack, and you put a picture of that piece of marble in the output stack in the energized area, that it would constantly charge that marble. And so, we had that output stack get bigger and bigger and bigger because we had all these pictures and all these things in there. And that was one of the early pre-FLFE discoveries. Yeah, and then Jeff and I came across him in the original inventor in 2007. I spent a couple of years working with him quite closely. And then I left for a few years and came back. And that's when, just before I left for a couple of years, I was working with Jeff on another project. And because Jeff and I are kind of gearheads, I was telling him about it, and he thought it'd be really interesting to see. So we flew up and we met the inventor, and we had some pretty amazing experiences together. And we started, when I came back, we started doing service work. We weren't sure where to go with it, but pre-2012, there was a lot of concern about what was going to happen at the strike of midnight. So we were doing service work by, we would, Anastasia, we would go on Google Earth and we would calibrate the lowest consciousness area of a continent using muscle testing or kinesiology. And then we would put a version of FLFE on that area and raise the level of consciousness of that area. And then it would lift the whole continent. I mean, maybe not much, but a point or two, but it was something. It was helping. And we wanted to contribute to having the transition to 2012 be a good transition. And so by the end of that process, we were spending an hour every morning, and we were learning stuff all the time, of course. And that's pre-business FLFE. Still 2011, coming up to 2012.
Yeah, that's just after that is the first time that one of you contacted me and we did our first podcast together.
Yeah, we started the business September 24th, 2013. Not after that, I don't know how we heard about you, but we reached out and you were kind enough to interview us.
Yes.
And we like doctors who like data. We like data.
Oh, yes.
Too,
so. I'm a total geeky nerd.
Yeah, we love our data.
Yeah, I really enjoy all of that data. So now that we have this, and you are sending this focused life force energy to this broadcast, so anybody listening afterwards will have gotten a little bit of a boost. Isn't that right? We talked about that right before the start of the recording.
Yep. Yeah, we have a way to activate a field for anyone watching. Much like you said, as a healer would do distance healing, on a video, that energy would be present on the video, for later watching. So it's much the same way, and it's activating a field, and it's just more prana, more life force energy there. It has many other positive attributes that we can get into. The reason why be in a high consciousness field, I mean, just number one is more energy for the body, for the innate intelligence to just pick up and do what needs to be done, repairs and upgrades. People notice with more chi, more energy flowing through their body, that their brain fog diminishes, their mental acuity goes up, they just have more energy during the day, they don't have that crash as badly in the afternoon, and they're just, the mental stamina was kind of another piece where people notice they can work longer. Not that we all want to work longer, but you can be doing something that needs your brain for longer. Say if you have to study as a student,
Well, even just
or
focus, by developing focus, you can do the job, whatever it is, more efficiently. So you actually have more free time at the end of it.
yeah, well
Yeah,
put.
it's a double win. We actually did that study with the Institute of Noetic Science in Petaluma, California, and we have data on it.
Yeah,
We have an increase in
when you turned it on and off on my house, the first time we spoke, I could feel it instantly. Like I'm very sensitive, so I feel that. And having had it on since then, right? So I've had it on since then. I don't even know what brain fog is anymore. Right. It just,
wow.
and right. And I turned 70 last year. So and I have a lot of energy. Like I walk like a young person. I walk about 5 miles a day, and I got through lifting a bunch of weight a little while ago, and I'll probably do some more later in the day on a different part of the body. But yeah, so it makes a difference. Plus I work full time.
I know you have recently worked on relationships. Didn't you do a course recently around relationships?
Yes, I did a 5-day Heal Your Relationships challenge, and I'm turning it into, a 5-day transformation for energy healers, because, for everybody, it's really important to have your relationships in order, because it's the number one factor in your health, your wealth, and your longevity. It's just from research. Harvard just came out with a paper on how, a long-term study, an 80-year study on health and longevity, and found that relationships beat out all other of the 7 major factors. So that was an important, an eye-opening result. And at UCLA, probably 10 years ago, they did a study on relationships and discovered that good relationships actually lengthen your telomeres and changes your DNA programming, right? It changes the epigenetic structure of your DNA. So it's just incredible what relationships do energetically for you, and why it's important. So it's especially important for healers that have a very open field, and they're, caring, and they want to help everybody, and they'll give up a lot of their own life force energy for it. So something like, focus life force energy on a healer will help replenish that light that they've given up. And in my courses, I teach them how to retain their light and how to protect themselves from giving it up while still helping other people. Right. So that's why I love your service so much.
Well, we have heard on the relationship side. So we have a lot of testimonials that come through all the time during webinars, or just people get on the site and just share. And we did a customer experience survey with Dr. Gary Schwartz, and improved communication was one of those things with people in the household. So I don't think we've mentioned, but the level of consciousness of the FLFE environments, unconditional love at that 550, to 570. So we're seeing relationships really blossom in that love zone, in the unconditional love zone, where we love ourselves, all those pieces of ourselves, and then can love others more.
Yes,
completely.
Absolutely. So they learn from that. But yes, that's exciting. And I know you've had a lot of developments like EMF mitigation, right? Because EMFs are here to stay. There's
yeah.
You live in a city,
they are.
you are bombarded, right?
Yeah, most homes have. I mean, when I lived in an apartment, I had there was 30 different routers I could see when I went to, put my Wi-Fi on, and was like, God, when, it used to be 2 or 3 routers. Now it's, of course, there's free Wi-Fi in almost every city. just because of the large service providers, at least up here, they put these advertisements out because they want you to, if you sign up at home, you get free Wi-Fi throughout the hotspots in the town. And it's, with the satellites going up in the air, Anastasia, and more cell phones and smart fridges, and smart vacuum cleaners, and all these smart appliances, it's going to continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I would advise people is to protect their bedroom if they can,
Mm-hmm.
right? To sleep. Like you can get sheets that will help keep the EMFs off of you. They have special
Mhm.
wire impregnated threads.
Mhm. Well, the research we did, so we saw that EMFs were degrading the environment. So that was kind of it seems to always come from the customers. So customers were calling us saying, well, I don't feel quite as good as I did. And we could see that the level of consciousness had dropped. And so we have a guarantee on properties that it's at the level they set on the slider. So we knew we had to find the issue, and whenever that happens, the service is free, while we investigate it. But so we'd call and find out what's changed, and it would be a smart meter, new router. Oh, we put the router under the bed, or a new cell tower across the street, and then of course 5G when that started to roll out. So what we discovered is that there's things we could do with the consciousness field to mitigate those EMFs, both externally coming in and internally in the field. So the energetic essence of shungite is something we brought into the field to work with those, either those EMF emanations internally and externally. And we also discovered, which is just fascinating, if you take a router, a Wi-Fi router, and you raise the level of consciousness of it up in the 600 range, the emanations become positive.
Wow.
Like there's some change that so the antenna is now vibrating at this higher consciousness level, and there's some change that occurs. We don't understand how exactly, and Dr. Schwartz is really excited to dig into that at some point. He's actually done some research on it already. How that harmonization works, or that, taking a consciousness lowering influence like that and have it be consciousness raising or neutral.
Yeah, the thing that just
when we
strikes me is it's probably harmonics, right? It's at a higher harmonic level, which is how actually your meridians work to carry your emotions, right? Different meridians will carry a whole variety of emotions. It's just based on harmonics.
I'll make
Sorry,
a
I
note of that too. I'll look into that. I thought I should mention, Anastasia, that when we're talking about level of consciousness, we're using the Dr. David Hawkins map of consciousness as a reference. It's
Yeah, from
developed
the book
obviously by
Power
Dr. David
versus
Hawkins.
Force. Yeah, from the book
Yeah,
Power
Power
versus
versus Force that's his most well-known book. It's the New York Times bestseller. But he created a map of consciousness using muscle testing or kinesiology, where it goes from 1 to infinity. 1 to 1,000 is the human realm. Divinity or God or universal consciousness would be infinity. Each level of consciousness, I'll just do a quick review of it so people have a sense. Each level of consciousness has a certain number of microwatts of electricity associated with it. On the human scale, 200 is integrity, 500 is lovingness, 540 is unconditional love, 600 is the beginning of enlightenment, 700 is where enlightenment begins to ripen, and then from 700 to 1,000, you have the world of the avatars and the great spiritual leaders of history, such as Buddha and Krishna and Jesus and people like that. So that's interesting enough with healers. Sometimes the biggest contribution that healers make to humanity's progress is not only healing the people that they're working on or facilitating healing, I suppose you could say, but their own individual level of consciousness compensates for a lot of negativity. So, for example, a person at 500 level of consciousness, depending on what the level of the world is, they could counterbalance for as many people as 500,000. You know, it
Yes.
varies depending on the level of consciousness of the world.
Yes. And people are born at certain
uh,
levels and they can go up in the
absolutely.
scale during their lifetime, usually not very much. But
Yeah,
some,
the averages aren't that great.
yeah, it's not very great. The average of humanity is like 180. And the average of highly educated people is a little over 400. Right. So, right. And
Yeah, yeah.
that's, and the reason is the people that seek higher education, like, you know, go on, they have a higher calling than themselves. So they usually seek the higher education. Like I'm talking master's, PhD, you know, MD, all of those. They seek the higher calling because they have a calling higher than themselves and they pursue it. That's why the average of those people is higher. Right. But I find that the average amongst healers tends to be over 450, and a lot of them were born at 500 and above. Right.
And we
Yeah.
see that they tend to go to 700 during healings.
Oh, yes. I
That their
push myself, I
field
push it
activated
temporarily
around
up.
700.
Yes, at least.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
yeah. So, you know, along with the EMF and how that has changed, I wanted to highlight that most, you know, you can subscribe to your service, but most of like 90 to 95% of this business, what they're doing here is to help raise the consciousness of the planet, of areas, and it's all done on a charity basis. It's given away for free. So I just want you to know when you click on the links that are here accompanying the show notes or the YouTube or blog, depending on where you are encountering this information, when you click on the links and you get a free trial with it, just know that you are also contributing to perpetuating this program to help raise the consciousness of the planet. And I can't emphasize enough, you know, I spent most of my life until I was 60 being a physics professor and researcher, right? And I studied vibrations of matter, but I've always been highly sensitive. And when I encountered this program and felt the difference in my own energy field, I knew that they were onto something. And that's why I've had them back so many times. And it's also been like some of the most popular of the podcasts that I deliver because this service and this, what you're doing is so important. It is the simplest way to deliver healing at a very cheap, you know, very low price for people, right? And people that would have lots of anger outbursts, although we did have one here recently that nothing could help him. His anxiety levels were off the charts. But there are people that, you know, are on the edge and they come here and they go, oh, it feels so good here. And I'm going, yeah, but the living room is still a bunch of boxes because we still haven't unpacked everything, right? But they still like it here. It's so cozy. It's so comfortable. I really love it here. And I'm looking and I'm going, yeah, but everything is old. The kitchen's from 2007, right? That's when my parents redid it. And it looks it too. It looks old fashioned.
Got that a nice avocado green melamine countertop.
No, that was the 70s. Sorry.
Oh, that was the 70s. Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
that's the
what
first
we
rental.
had.
That's when it was built, right?
No, it was
Do you have
built
any
in
shag carpeting
58.
still in the house?
Yeah, it was built in
Oh,
58.
58. Okay.
And we moved here in 67. And of course, our appliances were avocado with knotty pine cabinets.
Oh God.
My mom would say,
Is it
just look in
avocado
the
green or that
dictionary under.
orange?
Yeah, she'd say, look in the dictionary under ugly. You'll find our kitchen there.
Yeah, we had avocado cream, green, and we had that orange, that kind of burnt orange couch. Did you have one of those burnt orange couches that were popular back then? God,
I did for a while.
oh,
And
we had a sofa bed. It was a burnt orange couch sofa bed. It was like a big, it was like a three-seater, and I swear it weighed 800 pounds. When we tried to move it out of the house, it was like it took four of us.
So we could go back a little, take a step back a little bit. I just loved your comment about the harmonics, and it's just been kind of spinning in my mind over here. It might, I don't know if you've seen it recently, Anastasia, but on the website there is a GDV camera study, and the GDV camera, we have two studies. It's a frontier science device, it's not completely accepted, but what it shows is an environment with all the EMF influences, and it shows it as a very chaotic wave. So it's like a 24-hour period, and so that's the control, and so very spiky, very up and down. When FLFE was turned on, it became a much narrower band of energy. So not nearly as spiky, more harmonized. So that's, I'm just wondering if that's a harmonics effect there that may be occurring. So,
well, you know that waves are additive. So if you add two waves of the same frequency, their amplitude, right? Their amplitude are co-additive. And if you start adding them in of different frequency, you end up with that spiky looking wave you're talking about. So like imagine you are recording your voice on GarageBand, let's say, or on if you look on any iMovie or Final Cut Pro or Premiere Pro, they always show the waveforms of your voice, and your voice is consistent. Like every word out of your mouth has a lot of frequencies coming out until you start singing a single note. But when you sing a single note, all you'll see is a series of harmonics. So if you were to get like a frequency analyzer, where runs your voice through a Fourier transform analyzer, and for people to realize, you can get this for your phone as a guitar tuner, right? And I have one on my phone just to demonstrate it, right? You just turn it on and you can sing into the phone, and instead of seeing a bunch of ugly waveforms, you'll see just spikes. And those spikes represent the harmonics: 2 times the fundamental, 3 times the fundamental, 4 times the fundamental, 5 times the fundamental. So it just like octaves, when you play an octave like a C and a C on a piano, they sound like they belong together. Those are the harmonics. And one string, when you pluck it, will play all the harmonics, right? So that's what I'm thinking, is that when you put higher energy into that guitar string, right, you put more energy into it, you'll have more of the higher harmonics in it. Just like when you have your mouth sort of closed and you sing a note and you watch the frequency analyzer, you see mostly low tones. And if you open your mouth really wide, just like you're smiling really big and having a good time, right? And you analyze your singing voice, you'll see that you'll have a lot more of the higher harmonics in it, which is higher frequency, right? So we're trying to push things to higher frequency. And I think that's what's happening. It's a really simple process.
Is I feel it in my body as tension, like muscular tension. Like if I'm in an EMF zone without an FLFE phone with me, or if I turn it off to experiment, you can turn off the EMF in the control panel. I don't know if you've done that in the customer portal.
I turn it right back on.
It's like, why do I want to turn it off? But it's fun to just like see how you feel. And for me, when I turn off EMF mitigation, man, my shoulders start to come up and I feel that muscular tension. And I'll bet it's all those spikes, like those are interacting with the muscles in the body and the nerve impulses. but it feels like anxiety. And I think that's part of why there's so much anxiety in the world right now. There's especially kids.
Well,
So many kids are suffering from anxiety.
Well, any kind of low energy emotion, and the Heart Math Institute has done a perfect example of this, where they've measured the energy coming off of a heart. And the heart is not just an organ, but it's also a gland, and it secretes loving, calming hormones to the body, right? And when your heart is happy, all of these glandular parts of the heart relax and allow it to secrete. And when I personally, because I'm so sensitive, when I'm around people that are angry, they're radiating this out to me, and it feels like somebody poured itching powder on my skin. You know, I can feel it feels like prickles everywhere. And that's probably what you are experiencing with all those spikes, because we feel every single wave hitting our body, whether you are aware of it or not. Your body is experiencing it, right? So there are a lot of people that say, I never feel your healing. And then I go to the doctor and all of my values are way better. Like my kidneys are now healthy and my blood pressure has gone down. And, you know, so I'm doing in a more focused way what the focused life force energy does for everybody else. I just send it. I'm more directed with it. I send it exactly to where it needs to go. As one highly sensitive person said, it's like I'm using a laser scalpel on them and cutting out the problem. But yes,
that is interesting as a generalized support in the high consciousness field. So when we did this EMF mitigation research, we recruited EMF sensitives. They were either self-reported or diagnosed, and they'd never been on FLFE before, never heard of it. So we did an N of 10 study, and what we saw was, a decrease in symptom intensity and frequency. And we just did an N of 40 study, which replicated that in terms of decreased, frequency and decreased intensity. But one of the higher ones in the second study was blood pressure going down, because many of these people with high anxiety and these sensitivity had high blood pressure. And so that was one of the factors that improved being on the service.
Yes. Well, the way blood pressure works is that, all of our blood vessels have little muscles around them, and they contract, and it raises the pressure. And it's designed to do that when we get cold, to contract all our blood to come into the core of our body, right? But it drives the blood pressure up. And the heart glands I was just speaking about, when they're released, it lowers the blood pressure. So probably their heart got happier and dropped their blood pressure down. And stopped releasing those nasty prostaglandins that cause a lot of problems. Yeah, so I need to wrap up quickly. We're almost out of time. So I thank you, gentlemen, for coming on again and sharing. And one last thing, which we hadn't talked about before, was how plants react, right? I saw that I'm going to point to all of the interesting new things that the research that has come out with your researcher. What's his name? Schwartz?
Dr. Gary Schwartz.
Yes.
He's
And
a Harvard, Yale, University of Arizona professor.
That plants grow better. And not only do I saw that the fields become more dense with plants, significantly, not just one small standard deviation away, but significantly. And the number of leaves that grow is also better. And I just want to tell you, we've
And
had this orchid here for a long time, hasn't bloomed for a very long time. And this spring it bloomed, and it has been in bloom for the last 4 months. It has not stopped blooming. The flowers are still out. It's the most incredible thing. I walk by every day and I shake my head. Wow, that's amazing.
we have the same thing with orchids in our place. We had one that I think it was almost a year and a half. It just kept producing blooms, but we've never seen anything like it. Yeah, it's plants. Well, that's one of the ultimate placebos, right? Because you can't tell a plant to have an effect. You can influence plants, but yeah, we did a 10,000 acre organic farm study, and all this is under the research tab at our website. I think we have 13 or 14 pieces of evidence, depends how you look at it. But we did a 10,000 acre organic farm study, and there was a double-blind study. The farmer didn't know which part of the fields were on, and we gathered all the data from the John Deere tractor cloud, because they have very sophisticated harvesting technology now, and we had a 22.9% increase in yield in that study. And we've had bigger yields than other ones. They just haven't been as large, like significantly larger yields than that. But
Yeah, it's much larger than a single, even it's probably bigger than 3 standard deviations away from the normal plant yield, right?
Mhm.
yeah.
Which means it's out of the range of possibilities for it being something else.
Mhm.
Right. And so, yes. And the thing that I also want to mention is that plants actually have a higher frequency than humans, right?
Mhm.
When you measure the frequency of the field around a human, it vibrates between 60 and 80,000 megahertz, right? And if you measure a plant, it's about like a rose oil vibrates at 320 megahertz, right? So
Mhm.
it's like a factor of 4 above a healthy human. And as humans drop, like I actually have the chart here in front of me because I'm preparing for my first class again. I'm going through the cycle of my class. And it's the bioelectric frequencies around a human. And when a human is healthy, their frequency is at the top. And as it drops, like it starts at 80, it drops to 60. That's when illness starts. And then it drops to 40. That's when a lot of the chronic illnesses like cancer and kidney disease and things like that happen that spell death and Alzheimer's. And then when it drops to 20, that means that the body is about to give up the ghost. So by keeping, first of all, being around plants, making sure you have plants around, like we have a big garden out the back and we have plants in the house, keeping the plants around, especially healing plants like aloe and roses, will raise your own frequency, but having the ability to affect plants in a positive way will also affect you in a positive way. So, yeah. So I was very excited to read that. It's probably why my orchid is still doing so well. And some of the desert plants that haven't bloomed in years, they're all out there blooming right now. We have a lot of succulents around the yard, and so yes. So I thank you for coming. Thank you so much for being here and letting my listeners know, especially all of you highly sensitive people. This is an awesome service to have. And remember that most of what they earn goes to charity. And that you should give it a try. You just click on the link. There is no obligation. There's a free trial. You click on the link, and not only on your property, but you can also link it to your phone number. And I have it on my phone, so wherever I go, I have life force energy pumping into me. Right. So that's another clue. So you can get 2 services, one for a phone, it's attached to your phone number, and one for your home, which is attached to your address.
You could do a free trial on each one too.
Yes. So you can actually have a whole month of protection and high energy flowing into you. And I guarantee you'll feel better, even if you can't feel it when it goes on and off. Right. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you being here. And thank you, listeners. This is Dr. Anastasia Chopelas, and I will see you next time.